Hey, I'm Jon Gordon. I'm here with Jon Acuff, one of my favorite speakers on the planet, one of the funniest people in the world. I truly believe that. Jon, thanks for being with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jon.
So you've written a lot of books. Let's start with Start. What is Start all about?
It's about beginning. It's about kind of pushing through that fear that a lot of people have right out of the gate. Someday I could, or if I really wanted to, I could, getting people kind of off the couch, off the someday I'll write a book, and getting them to begin actually dealing with the things they care about.
So this is Positive University. So my question to you is how do you stay positive when you're starting and things aren't going well? And how do you stay positive through challenges? This is for you personally.
Yeah, I guess for me, I remember that the results are always slower and smaller than you want them to be. Like whenever, I always joke, I know exactly how long it'll take for your dream to happen, longer than you want. I've never met somebody that said it was so much faster and easier than I thought. It's usually the opposite. You launch a product and on day one, you send 10,000 emails and 2 people buy it and you're crushed. And so I think a big part of it is understanding, you need a framework. So when and you need people that will remind you that. So I've got a buddy, Brian Elaine, who helps me with a lot of my stuff. And when we do a product launch, he'll say this before we even launch. He'll go, remember, the first day is usually 3% results. So you're going to want 10, it's 3. And that helps reframe oh, that's right. That's not that's what's normal. That's the average. And having somebody else that can kind of keep you in check on that. I think we overuse the word hack, but people are the original hack in that a relationship can tell you, oh, hey, you're missing this thing that you need in your life, or hey, here's the reality of this situation. So I think relationship goes a long way to maintaining positivity.
I love that. I wasn't exaggerating when I was saying that. I think you're one of the funniest people on the planet. I was just curious. Is that something you work at? Were you always funny growing up? Were you the class clown in high school?
I wasn't a class clown. I would say humor was important to our family. My dad would take me to comedy clubs when I was in high school. And we'd go see Brian Regan and guys like that. So I would say my father put a value on humor. My brothers are funny. My sister's funny. But I would then say, I've worked at it. I've watched 100 comedians for every business speaker. It's something I enjoy, the craft of it, the art of it, so seeing, okay, here's how Bill Burr structured a joke. And here's what, I watched a video today of his 10 best comebacks. And it was just him coming back to situations in the moment on talk show interviews. So one today I saw there's this really aggressive lady talking to Conan O'Brien, and Bill Burr was in the middle. He'd already done his bit, and she's trying to get her coat off to show a tattoo, but she's got the mic on, and she finally goes to Bill Burr. And she just talked about how her and her fiance they broke up, and it was this terrible thing. And Bill Burr says, she goes, help me with the jacket. She yells at him. He goes, hey, Conan, isn't it weird your marriage didn't work out? Isn't that surprising? Who could have seen? And so that was so pure and in the moment. And so I study that and I care about that. And I don't know if I don't think I'll go the route. I want to do an open mic night where there's no, all my humor has a point. It eventually funnels you somewhere, but it'd be fun to do humor that didn't necessarily funnel you. I had a chance to do that this week, but I was already speaking and I was already hosting at the same event. And if you then try to do 15 minutes of comedy, it's so confusing to the audience. The audience keeps waiting for the serious thing. And then the next time they see you, they keep waiting for the funny thing. So I think as a speaker, 99% of the time I won't host and speak, because even that blurs the lines in a way I don't like. I'm there to speak, somebody else can host, but this is an event I've done 2 or 3 years in a row. And so I have a relationship with the audience already. So that's the difference.
If someone came to you and said, hey, we want you to have a Broadway show on Broadway, would you do it?
No, I can't sing. I would say I would love to, I'd love to do, if somebody came to me and said, we want you to do an hour-long comedy special in December, I would do that. But I would want it to be amazing. And so I would have to go into Rocky mode and start going to nightclubs, there's just brilliant, Chris Rock. He's fascinating because when he has a new set, he practices it without any personality. He takes the jokes and just reads them because he doesn't want the Chris Rock personality to have to save the joke. And so I love that about a great craftsman where he gets the joke to where it's killing and then he adds Chris Rock personality and it goes over the top. Public speaking is probably the thing I nerd out. I'm a nerd about that. Like I really, to the point, like I think I might write a book about it. About like, cause my argument is everyone has to do it. Like, you know, when I drop my car off to get repaired because I got in a car accident, the lady who's telling me the estimate for the damages is public speaking. Like it's not, the stage of one is common, you know? And so if you know, especially in a distracted, loud, busy world, your ability to communicate an idea succinctly that sticks, like that's money. Like I think it's the most important thing.
I follow you on Twitter and you seem to find humor in so many places. You're always looking for it. Is that part of the craft? Is that part of the growth and what you do to look for it?
Yeah, I think you have to look for it. You have to add it when it's not there. Like, I think that Twitter, we take ourselves so seriously. So there's so many people, like Twitter is just so sanctimonious and like patronizing and just like, so I try to see it in the ridiculousness of it. Like, I know I've got a post that I screenshotted it and like, it was like people enraged that Beyonce's second Coachella performance wasn't live streamed. And so I'm going to say like people who didn't pay for enraged thing wasn't given to them for free just because. Like the absurdity of our demanding consumer who didn't buy the live stream, but it's like, how dare they put on an event and pay Beyonce $150,000 and not give me a free video? And they've already live streamed the first one. So like, I like poking, I think good comedians are social commentators. So I like when, you know, there's a bit of social commentary. Like I would argue, like we all have, like regardless of your politics, everybody has the friend in their life where they go, man, it's raining a lot. And then somebody would be like, yeah, Trump doesn't even believe in global warming. Or you'd be like, I ate a hamburger today. Trump doesn't like hamburgers. It's like, we all have the over Trump friend. It's just like, dude. So like, but we also had the thanks Obama friend. Like, you know, for 8 years, if your car wasn't running right, you're like, thanks Obama. So his fault somehow. So like, I just like being able to kind of poke fun at both of those because I think they're equally ridiculous. And I think so that stuff is just, some of the stuff drives me nuts, and I have to be careful not to be too aggressive about it because it drives me crazy right now.
And you were in an exotic pet show just this recently. What was that like? Yeah. Is there any humor in that?
Oh, that place is a walking humor. Like before it even got into the building, there was a guy breakdancing in the parking lot, like seriously breakdancing. And so it's just hilarious because like everybody will have weird animals and baby strollers. You'll be like, that dude has a lemur. Like, okay. And then like to the point where like eventually we're like, oh, what's in that stroller? And it was a baby. And I was like, oh, it's just a dumb, normal human baby. Like how boring. Like, you know, so yeah, it's like if the zoo had a day where it was bring your own pet to the zoo. And so like, it's people selling things like prairie dogs, but it's also people who have brought their own prairie dog to be like, hey, I got a prairie dog. So like they sell shirts that have pouches in them for your sugar glider. Because a sugar glider, which is kind of a type of squirrel, is a marsupial and needs to be closed. So they have shirts with a zipper and they'll say like sugar daddy and it'll be like a sugar glider. Like, how do you not laugh at that like constantly? Like over and over, you just like, I heard somebody say like, well, it's not like I'm cooking meth. And I was like, well, that's a weird defense. Like, but you know, like I guess if you own monkeys, you have to be like, hey, it's not like I'm cooking meth. Like, so yeah, I love that place. And I'm going to have this lady on my podcast. She raises, like, she's read a bunch of my books, and she raises like wolves and foxes and coyotes and bobcats. And that's fascinating. And to buy a wolf, I've learned it has to have 5% dog in it of DNA. So like a smidge of dog, like a little bit of dog. And so like, that's fascinating. I think people are interested in that way. I went to a Y2K gun show and it was just as funny. Because Y2K, some of your listeners won't remember this, but like it was a thing that we were like, ooh. And so they had a gun show and people were saying things like, when the banks collapse, bullets will be currency. And I was like, I wasn't there to buy a gun. I was just there to like soak it all in and be like, whoa. Like I bought a t-shirt that said, if you can't get out, you better get ready. And I don't know what out meant, like where to wear. I bought a shirt at the pet fair that says frog life on knuckles, like instead of thug life. Like, I just like that. That's weird. It's interesting to me.
That's so funny. Now, you also read a lot of books. You've written Do Over and Finish. Do I finish and then I do over after I finish, or do I?
I think you buy multiple copies of Finish and give them out to friends. Do Over is so specific because it's career transition, and it's fascinating. That book, the phrase "do over" feel is negative. I think it's positive. And it might be like we're talking about positivity. I think a do over is a positive thing. It's a fresh start. It's another try. But we have a culture that loves to live in denial. So like, even as the house is on fire, like, it's fine, you know? So yeah, I learned a lot in the selling of that one, because you never want a book to force somebody to make a difficult admission. It's hard to have that conversation. So Finish has been a lot easier because it is such an obvious felt need. Like, people don't finish things.
Why don't they finish things?
I mean, I think there's a variety of reasons. I mean, I think they go from everywhere from like they tried something too big, which we don't like to admit happens. We have this go big or go home attitude, and usually that means you go home. So it's from there all the way to like the emotional side of it, which is they might not feel they deserve good things. And the second it starts going well, they self-sabotage. And so they can do a million productivity tips, but it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, they're going to drill a hole in their own ship, and it's going to fall apart. So I think there's a million. I mean, it'd be lazy to say they're afraid. There is fear involved, but there's perfectionism involved. There's expectations. There's, the pace of it. I think there's a ton of reasons people, not according to the University of Scranton, which as soon as you say that online, people are like, The Office, is that a real place? And so like, if you ever see me post that stat, I'll be like, according to a university study. No offense to the University of Scranton. I just know as soon as people see that word, that's why 92% of goals fail, is there's a million things stacked against you, I think.
So why is this book Finish so important?
I think it's important because scientifically, the things you don't finish weigh heavier on you than the things you do. So you remember incomplete goals more than complete. And we've all had that moment where you're laying in bed and you try to go to sleep. And your brain's like, instead, let's think about things you failed at 3 years ago. I think it's important because according to the New York Times, 81% of Americans want to write a book and less than 1% do. And so imagine 80% of people walking around with an unfulfilled thing. They asked Stephen King what would have happened if he didn't become a writer, and he said, I would have died of alcoholism at 50. And he said, people who aren't doing the thing they're supposed to do are hard to be around. And, our mutual friend Brian Koppelman talks about like your creativity and your kind of passion, they mutate and they sour. And so I think it matters because not only is there joy in the process and the completion, you kind of clear out the potential for bitterness. The book talks about, I think most people who are mad online, it's their only form of passion and their only expression of passion. And that's where the anger comes from. Because let's say you have 100 units of passion. If you're living like you're loving your wife and you're with your kids and you've got a job that's challenging, but you feel fulfilled, you're using like 95 of those up. So like you got 5 left for anger, whatever. If you're not in relationship, you're not, working on your faith, you're not in shape, you're not at a job that fulfills you, you might have 95 units of anger available for Twitter, and you go, how do these people so angry? It's because that's their only, like, they're a tiny little thin trickle of passion, and it's got this well that tries to pour itself into it.
So it would help if they had a hobby, or if they went to exercise or did something else besides that.
A million things. Yeah. Or did something in their own community. I mean, I wish Twitter required you to volunteer for an hour before you got to talk about an issue. Like as soon as you wanted to get on your high horse, they'd go, whoa, wait a second. Have you even done anything like where you live about this thing? And then if you were like, no, they'd be like, I'm sorry. Like you don't get to tweet. Go help people in Kansas. And then you go do that. Like that would be amazing. I think that'd be so much better. But instead you get to get on without a cost to yourself and do these crazy tweets or posts.
So Finish has received like incredible reviews. What are you hearing from people, or what's a story where someone finished something and it was because of your book and they were changed?
Yeah. So I have a shelf in my office that's books people have written because they read Finish. And so they'll send me I'm looking at it right now. There's probably 40 up there, and there's manuscripts to completed books. And it's people say, hey, and they'll include, I have these little Post-it notes that say, today I will finish. And they'll say like, hey, this pushed me over the edge. Or, I talked to somebody the other day, they're like, I lost 26 pounds. This woman said, I worked on my posture. Her goal was, I don't stand well and it hurts my back and it's not good for me. So I made a goal of posture. Like, I love that because it's different than mine. Like, it's very different. And so I think that's really, really fun. And it's been it's the most tangible book I have where people can say, I did this, which led me to do this. So whether it's losing weight or writing a book, I get to see the results. And that's, every time I go to my post office box, there's like the joke at, like, if I have a slip for a package, the whole store goes, got another book, probably going to be a book. And then they'll hand me a book and I go, that's amazing. So like, that's fun.
I love that. So do people not start because they're afraid that they won't be able to finish?
They don't start because they're afraid it won't be as perfect as they think it will be. Like, I always kind of relate this to like the show Bridezilla used to show like brides who are out of control. And the reason they're out of control is that from the age of 6, they dreamed about that moment. So like when the tablecloth color isn't what they wanted, they lose it. And so part of it is if you've cared about it for a while, it becomes this thing. Another part is that like it's people will say there's this trade-off. They'll say, I'd rather sit on the sidelines and believe I could have done it than get in the game and be confirmed that I couldn't. So like, what if I try and I can't? Like, it's easier for me to say someday I'll write a book, which doesn't cost me anything, than it is for me to actually try and find, wow, like the thing I thought I was good at, I'm not good at it yet. And it might take a lot of time. And so I think that's a big part of it is they don't want to start because then they lose the fantasy of I could do it. And they might learn something they don't want to learn.
When someone asks you about writing a book or wanting to write a book and they say, where should I start? What do you tell them?
I say there's 3 things. Like, I always draw it like a Venn diagram because it's just easier to understand. But like, if you imagine 3 circles that are overlapping and you've got that little center part, one circle is your curiosity. What's a question you're willing to spend years looking for an answer to? And you're willing to talk about it for 10 years. Like, you talk, like, it's not like you've got a wall of books behind you. It's not like when the new book comes out, you stop the other book. Like, you're going to be engaged with this idea for a long time. So that's the first thing. Second thing is there a real need? Do people need it? Third thing is it missing from the marketplace? So with Finish, I wanted to know, why don't I finish things? I had people come up to me and say, hey, no offense, I like your book Start, but I really need one about finishing. And then when I went to Amazon and typed in Finish, all that came up was dishwasher detergent. And like, I was like, oh my, even now, if you go to Amazon and type Finish, I'm like rank 6, And so what I tell people is, if you have a curiosity and there's actually a need, but it's not missing in the marketplace, you have a cake pop. Like, if somebody told me today, I'm going to start making cake pops, I go, dude, we've had those for like 10 years. Like, it's going to be really hard. If you have a passion and it's missing in the marketplace, but people don't need it, you have a hobby. Like, awesome. Like, go make a really specific type of sweater out of alpaca because you like it and you're curious and it's missing in the market, but nobody needs that. It's a hobby. If you have, it's missing in the marketplace and people need it, but you don't have a curiosity, you have a day job. You're like, you have no, like, you might make money on it, might be successful. You have no passion about it. Eventually it's just a different type of prison. So that's whether you're going to start a business, whether you're going to give a speech, whether you're going to do anything, I think you look for those 3 things.
So I do the Triple H exercise with each guest, and the first H is hero. Who is one of your heroes?
I'd definitely say my dad. He started a church in New England in the 80s, like a Southern Baptist church, which was kind of unheard of at the time. So I definitely learned how to be an entrepreneur from him. Also how to speak, like, he's a pastor. So I got to watch him use humor. And he couldn't, in the South, there's cultural Christianity. So people grew up around it. So we all have the same language. When you say love on, all right, I know what that means. Or, a hedge of protection, where in outside of Boston, my dad didn't have any of that to use because people didn't grow up that. So I got to watch him do something fresh that way that I think was really, and I got to see him care about people. Like, He's still to this day will call me and say, hey, did you see this comedian did this bit about such and such? And that'll be the whole call. And like, I'll go look it up. So like, he's still actively engaged and like, that's interesting. Like, let me grow that. How do I connect? Like, so that's always fascinating to me. I'd say him definitely.
Is he still a pastor?
Yeah. He's pastors in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Is he still a Patriots fan?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we grew up there and we grew up there during the bad years. Like people think the most recent history is the history. No, like I remember going to a Super Bowl party where the Bears destroyed us. And it was like the Super Bowl shuffle with Jim McMahon and Walter Payton and the fridge. Like I remember those days. So I think my wife's like, I'm going to be sad for you once the dynasty is over, but I've already had not a dynasty for 15 years. So like when Brady retires and Belichick does something different, then like, plus Boston, then I'll go watch the Celtics or then I'll go watch the Red Sox, like, or the Bruins. Like that town is spoiled for championships, dude. Like it's in my last 10 years of my life or maybe 15, they've all won multiple championships like that. That's unbelievable.
It's incredible. So what's a hardship that you face in your life that was a defining moment that helped you become who you are today? That's the hardship.
Well, I mean, I think leaving my last job was a hardship to a degree. Like anytime you start over to that degree and kind of have to rebuild, I think that's a hardship. And you're suddenly not with 100 people you were with every day, and you have to figure out, okay, like, what do I do for money? Like, what does that look like? I would say that was a career hardship. I have been fortunate in that I haven't lost a parent. I haven't had a close family member get dramatically ill. I haven't had a car crash or a friend deployed in Afghanistan who lost their life. So I've had a career hardship, but I don't think I've had like one of those defining hardships where there's a before and after moment. Because a real hardship is it's life before the accident, life after the accident. And so thus far, I haven't had to deal with that. I think we all experience loss, but I think there's sizes of loss. So I don't want to denigrate like a real one with my, like, I had a job change,
Right.
Like it was hard at the time, but it wasn't like my kid didn't get sick,
Was that a defining moment that helped you become who you are though? The job change
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, like that's 5 years later and I run my own business. So it wasn't like, I didn't have a job change in that I was at a company, I went to a different company. It was, I was at companies for 15 years or whatever. And then I wasn't. And I was like, okay, like, let me build this thing. Like, how do I work by myself? How do I hire people? How do I lead people? Like, yeah, that's been very defining as far as, and you know how it is. Like, I love when people are like, oh, your job isn't your life. It's not, but it is also something you do 40 or 50 hours a your week. Like, it is interwoven if you're doing it right. And so, yeah, I would say that impacted me definitely.
Would you say that your job and your life are though interwoven in so many ways that like, cause you're always thinking about your work. You're always thinking about comedy. Even you tweet about your family, you talk about them on stage. Wouldn't you say it's one and the same?
Yeah, it's one and the same, but I do try to like, it's funny. I've recently kind of rediscovered how much I love skiing. Like I love to ski, snow ski. And a counselor challenged me on it. Like I don't relax easily. Like I can be a workaholic. And so I decided to go skiing. So of course, like I get an app that tracks my speed and my altitude. And like, I become obsessed with that. And then it's like, now I'm trying to dominate that. So like, I do try to go like, how do I enjoy this for just the thing? Like, I don't need to track it. I don't need to measure it. Like it's enough that it's a thing. Like, but I slip into that so easily. Like even this year, I was already like, okay, I skied 10 days. My goal next year is to ski 11. I'm going to add a day every year. Like, which from Nashville is hard. Like, no, like you have to fly somewhere, but so I would say they're interwoven, but I don't try to, I try to turn it off to some degree so that I experience things for the experience, not for the content.
Does your family laugh at your jokes as much as I do?
No, my wife, I think is like, it's funny. And we live in a small town. So like you get known in your small town. Like I always tell people people are like, oh, you get recognized. Not really. Like I could walk through the Dallas airport and not a single person can be like, oh my gosh. But like in my small town, if you speak at a 2,000 person event, like in your backyard, there's now 2,000 people that know oh, hey, that's so I always joke with my wife, like she picked up food the other day and she was like, oh, she was like, the girl was like, are you Jon Acuff's wife? Like, oh my gosh. And I was like, so I always joke, like, it must be amazing to get to be married to me like that. I mean, you get this all the time. So I know an idea is really funny if I say it to her and she thinks it's funny, like, because she's heard it all. My kids think my kids think I'm goofy. Like, they do think I'm cool, and that, like, we were at this private school and some kids called me and my daughter like civilians, and like, which I guess was like a private school insult. And so she, to me, was like, whatever, that kid's dad's an accountant. My dad's a New York Times bestselling author. I'll be all right. And I was like, yeah. So like, I do think that part's cool. They're only impressed if like The Rock responded to me on Twitter, or like Jenna Fisher, who was Pam in The Office. So like, they're impressed with stuff like that. Or like, if you know how it is, like if I go to an event and the client gives me something cool, like they don't care that I spoke, they don't care that I'm raising my rate, whatever. They're like, oh, did you get a cool Patagonia bag? Like, awesome. Like, did you, is there a water bottle? And so like their water, like be at school with some water bottle. It's like Embrace Home Loans, which was like a super nice client, and gave me a water, like, so that part of their life is funny to me. But I think yeah.
What's the most fun experience you've had where you've been recognized in an airport or on a plane and your family was there, or perhaps maybe not there? Or maybe awkward moment.
A fun one was Andy Stanley, who I think is one of the best speakers of our generation.
Yes.
I saw him years ago and he said, hey, my son bought your book with his own money, and he's a teenager, and that's not how teenagers work. And so that was like, I wasn't like recognized in the sense that he was like, oh man, but it was cool that he was like, oh yeah, I dig what, what you do and how you're doing it. And so that was kind of from somebody who's not really even a peer, but like next, like that was fun. And like, oh, okay. And then, the exotic pet animal lady was like, oh, I love your books. And that was kind of funny, because I was like, I love your wolves, but I wouldn't say, like, I saw Allen Iverson, the old NBA player, at the airport like a month ago. I wish I had talked to him. I was too nervous. And he had a 76ers hat on that said Iverson on the back. And I was like, that dude doesn't even care. Like, if you wear an Iverson hat and you're Iverson, I should be able to come up and be like, hey, dude, you're Allen Iverson. But like, I just think that, I just thought that was funny. But that's what I like about corporate events is it's funny. Church events have a greater degree of fame than corporate, which is weird and backwards. But like at a corporate event, they've never heard of you. There's not a long book signing line, and they don't want a photo. And I'm not against those things, but I know from a health perspective, it's easier on me to stay grounded if people aren't like, oh my gosh, like, and corporate is a very safe place to have a career, because like they might be there because their boss said, we have 2,000 in annual learning, you need to go spend it. And so you went to this conference and you're like, oh, that guy was funny. Like that I kind of dig.
You're doing more and more corporate engagements.
95% corporate. Yeah, I love it. It's just different. I'm not a Sunday morning pulpit guy. I'm just not. And there's way too many of them that are good that I don't need to take their spot. So I might do a Saturday night leadership event to church leaders. But like this week I'll speak at the Orange Conference, which I love because it's church leaders. And so it's 8,000 leaders and it's fun, and it's led by Reggie Joyner, who's another one of my heroes. And so like, that's really fun, but I haven't done like a camp or a church probably in 3 years. Not because I didn't enjoy them, just because I've got a niche and I'm staying in my lane. Like I'm staying in my lane, and although I read the Bible as an individual, it's not what I'm an expert at. So I'm fine with that.
That's great. So the last H is highlight. What's a highlight in your life? Could be anything.
Yeah. I mean, this year I went to Austria to ski. So that was pretty baller. And my wife had just been in Singapore and Switzerland. So she was like, go for it. Like she actually kind of dared me to do it, because it was this crazy trip with this ski shop out of Nashville. So like, that was super fun. And I think one of my favorite things on the planet to do with my kids is to ski. So then like the week after that, we skied in Utah. And so to ski with my girls like that's fun. Like and to have, as your kids get old enough to do activities with you, where like, that's another kind of amazing to me. So like, I would say the ski season we had this year was pretty awesome. Like we just had so much fun. That's at least in the last, it's nice when your book does well. It's nice, another one would be, I spoke in Athens, Greece for Nokia. Like that was from a speaking engagement. And we went to Santorini, this island off the coast, for a couple of days with my wife. And so like, that was like, as far as events go, like that was one where you're like, this is legit. Like it's a real deal client, which is awesome. It's Nokia and it's international. Like that was super fun. So I had a blast on that one.
Do you remember when you first made the New York Times bestseller list and what did that feel like?
Yeah, I remember it was, I was at a restaurant in Dallas and it was the release of Start. And I actually saw it on Twitter. Somebody posted it before, like they were like, hey, congrats. And the team was mad because they wanted to surprise me. But so that was, I remember being like, oh man, and then the second time, I've only hit it twice. It's a really hard list to hit. I was by myself in a Toronto hotel doing media the next day. And that one was a little lonelier because it was just like, how like this guy, Phil Jones, who's this British speaker, I think it's really great. He said, speaking is a lonely business. And he's right. Like if you're in a musician in a band, you have a crew, you have a team. Like for you and I, people always ask me that, they're like, who travels with you? And I would like 99% of the time, I don't know, maybe it's different for you. I don't have somebody like there's not an assistant. There's not like, I think when my kids are graduated high school, Jenny will come on more of these. But some of them she won't. Like she's not going to go do the overnighter in Tulsa with me to go. Like she's going to be with her friends in our town. So like, I think that's one of the, like, so I remember telling the waitress at like the restaurant that night, she was like, okay, like that one was lonelier. I was with friends the first time. That one was like, the challenge is you go from talking to 1,000 people to you're by yourself at like a Jimmy John's eating a sub. Like in 10 minutes. That's hard. Like that happened to me at Catalyst one year, 1,000-person breakout, crushed it, felt good about it. They gave me the wrong directions to the like speaker's dinner. Ended up, it wasn't Jimmy John's. It was like Firehouse Subs. And like 8 people from my speech were like, do you want to eat with us? Like they had pity on me. And they were kind of like, what are you doing here? I was like, I'm eating a sub. Like it was, I don't know. Public speaking is funny that way. That's why I have so much empathy for people who do it and do it well. I don't, same with comedians. Comedians, it's the same way. Like, and you're getting heckled and you don't make great money. No. Like comedian, that's what people think. They're like, why don't you do comedy full time? I'm like, because I have to do 200 gigs a year and you have to do 8 in a weekend. And like, I don't know. Like I have a lot of respect for comedians who get to that level where you're getting great money. I just think the general public has a misconception about that. Like for me, I'm good. Like corporate, I love corporate clients. They're so much fun.
Yeah, it's great. And I do travel alone like you, and you're right. It's really lonely. And my kids are so busy doing their stuff in their life. It's not like they say, oh yeah, Dad, I want to go with you. No. Like, they'll come on like fun ones. Like we're doing a cruise, like they'll go on the cruise, but like for the most part, I get it. Like they want to be with their friends. So like during the summer, like good luck. Like, so we'll see. Like I'm doing one in Louisville for a couple days this summer, but I still think my oldest daughter would be like, I don't want to go to Louisville. Like, what are we going to go to the Bat Museum? Like, like who cares? So I don't know. We'll see. I bet she won't want to come, but we'll see. Who knows? So last question, what are you excited about going forward? New book, new work?
Yeah. I'm excited this week because I'm giving 6 speeches. So I've got it's one of those weeks where it'll be challenging content wise. And when I have that many, I'll rely on notes on some of them. I'm not trying to impress anybody with my memorization skills. Like very rarely has somebody said to me, the thing I like the most is you are good at memorizing. Like I would rather have notes and be active and honest about that and get the content out than not have the note, but forget key things because I wanted to look like I was put together. So I'm excited. This week is like, it's that nervous excitement of like, okay. And I'm doing something fun. Like everything from like 8,000 people in the room to like 50. So it's this range. It's everything from like 10 minutes to an hour. So that'll be fun. And then, yeah, I'm working on a new book. I'm trying to figure out like, what do I think I have a sense of it, but we'll see. I don't know. Books change. So.
Can you see what it's about?
No, not yet. Not yet. No. I mean, I'm excited about the summer. Like, we have a neighborhood pool. We're going to go to a bunch. I'm excited about that cruise. We're doing it with Sandy Patty, and we did one last year, and she's like, her and her family are amazing. Like, they're just such a neat, like, blended family. So that'll be really fun. And then I'm trying to think, and then I'm going to try to go skiing in December. I'm already thinking like, all right, I'm going to do December. I'm going to snowbird. So like, I'm excited about having fun with that. Like, I'm not naturally good at expressing fun. And so I'll become a workaholic real fast. And so I have to kind of be smart about it.
Not good expressing fun, but you're very funny. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I mean, you meet these same guys as I do. A lot of these comedians that are hilarious are like super depressed off stage. Like, you talk to them, you're like, that is dark. And sometimes it's obvious. You're like, that's a dark comedian. That's dark. Of course, he's dark off stage. Sometimes it's like, they're hilarious and fun, and they're, hey, but that's just like a huge mask for like, but my dad never loved me, like, not all of them. Seinfeld always hates that. He's like, you don't have to be messed up to be a comedian. But like, a lot of comedians argue the opposite, where they're like, because the idea that the chutzpah to think these people should listen to me, like, just as a human, is like, that's pretty wild. Like, to believe that like strangers should hear you and like, you should be the one talking. Like, you're a public speaker, like when you're on a panel and you're like, I wish these people would shut up. Like, I just want to talk. Like, I hate panels. Like, when somebody's like, be on our panel, I'm like, oh, that's just like, all I'm doing is waiting for my turn to talk. And that's not fun. I would rather just talk. So yeah, panels, man. I'm not saying they're bad at getting information across. They're not my favorite thing. Like,
Jon Acuff, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. You're the best.